My name's Andrew Gibbons. I'm a professor at the School of Education at Auckland University of Technology. My background is as an early childhood teacher, and that really drives my thinking about the intersections of design and education and my role as a teacher. So, a strong commitment to learning through play, and also a strong commitment to questioning what it is to talk about things like play. So that emerged in my doctoral work, where I questioned play as a form of technology that we use to insert into a child's life to understand why it is that we put children through education systems. And so some of that thinking through my PhD will be something that we talk about today in the session on design and education and the future of those two operations. I'd also like to say that whilst early childhood education is my focus and my purpose as a philosopher and as a teacher educator, I'm also strongly committed to working across disciplines and boundaries. I particularly enjoy working with filmmakers and dancers, and I particularly enjoy like challenging those notions of how we work together as collaborators, as negotiators, and as thinkers within the university space. So that's a little bit about me. I'm going to pass over to Ricardo.
Thank you, Andrew. Yes, I'm Ricardo Sosa, and until last month, I was a professor at Auckland University of Technology. At the moment, I have an adjunct position at Monash University in Australia. And my career started as a designer, as an industrial designer in the 90s. And actually, my honors project in my undergrad degree was called The Classroom of the Future. So I have been thinking about learning and teaching and technologies and spaces for a long time. One of my first jobs was in Singapore in the National University. I found an interesting group of people in the School of Computer Science in a lab called the Learning Environments and Technologies lab. And I worked there for a couple of years developing interactive multimedia technologies for learning. And of course, in my academic career, I'm an educator, and I've been very interested in the relationships and the practices of learning. As a lifelong learner, I recognize a lot of my learning has been self done, or done with communities or and groups outside of the classroom, outside of the formal curriculum. And so, yeah, that's my background. I work in the space of design and creative technologies. And I think that's good for the introductory part. So we're going to move next to talk about how we met, what we share, our shared interests between education and design, and some of the key moments of connections and resonances between our work. So, Andrew, you want to go?
We became colleagues around a number of projects that didn't particularly focus on the project. It wasn't the project that brought the designer and the teacher together. It was the capacity to be particularly motivated by certain concerns or certain aspirations. And the first one, so when you understand the importance of asking questions about design education, you have to understand the importance of your motivation or your will. And for us, I think that was around the importance of social justice. That when we began recognizing what motivated us to question and explore and research and challenge our own practice and the practice of others, and our concerns around curriculum across a variety of different educational contexts, it was the question of social justice, and in particular, the question of emancipation. And then deeper than that, the question of emancipation not as something that is the responsibility of the academy or an expert scholar, but emancipation that comes from within. So the thing that first got us engaged in making connections was this idea that we're concerned with working with people to support their self-emancipation, and everything flowed out of that. Without that, I think the concerns around design, our concerns around education fall flat. So that's my start point, I guess. And so, Ricardo, that's my take on it. I'm quite
Yes.
interested in your thinking about, because I can't speak for us both, and that's the beauty of it.
No, absolutely. I mean, we had previous discussions and we have actually a long list of things, but yeah, I think so I forgot to mention that I'm originally from Mexico, and I think that's relevant now because we are now coming to you from Aotearoa, New Zealand. And another thing that I realized over the period of our collaborations has been that we've both been travelers in our lives, and we've both lived in different places, and and here I only speak for myself, but that has also so being originally from Mexico and then traveling around the world and extensively in Asia has also made me very aware of the injustices in terms of access to education, but also in terms of the effects of education. And so I think, yeah, that's definitely something that brought us together, that mutual interest in the future and more uh, fair futures. And that also brought us into, because another element in our collaborations was meeting a group of teachers at a local high school in South Auckland, um, who also shared a lot of these values and aspirations and ideals. So that partnership with the local teachers also brought us together. Personally, and again, I think Andrew shares some of this, but he will speak to that. I'm very interested in the creative possibilities of technology and also the ways of using technology in more critical ways, in ways that are more open and less private. So I come from the time when the internet, the web, was this dream of more universal access, more democratic access to information. And it was obviously in the last 20 years, 25 years that we saw the privatization of the internet. And that is my fear when I see new technologies like robotics, tech for education now, large language models and AI. It's always, I think that there is always a risk of using these technologies in ways that benefit a small minority of people rather than most people. So we both, I think, anticipate the risks and the perils, as well as the opportunities with technology, and that has brought us together as well to talk about science fiction. Um, but I'll let Andrew complement that idea from there.
Sure. I mean, here's the provocation, I think, for us to think about, that every moment of exploring what is a future innovation or technological disruption in education should be led by the Luddites, right? So this would be typically almost heresy within like educational technologies to suggest that it's the Luddites that should lead. But for me, the Luddite is the person that questions and understands the impact of technology on one's life and one's community. Luddite doesn't mean rejecting technology. Luddite means to go, how is this technology going to have some kind of influence over my future or the future of my world? So the start point should always like, how do I take the approach of the Luddite in relation to the technological questions and the design questions that that I that I want to explore as an educator and as part of a school or an educational community. And that's why science fiction, I think, has a particular function to play, because it plays poetically with disruptions and eruptions, to slow down and to think what if and why. And the awesome thing about good science fiction also is that it suddenly turns us into a realization of how is this not already the case? So if we think, for instance, of the the future of being able to download information directly into the brain of the learner, um, and wondering about what it is that we're currently doing towards that future as if it's a good future, and then asking ourselves as teachers, how is it that we're not doing that already? And that's where science fiction is excellent, because when we watch a character that can suddenly flick a switch or take a pill and suddenly they know something, that actually begs us to ask, how is it that we think about education as if it's somehow different to that? And that's this one essential thing that brings Ricardo and I together, is a concern for a kind of education that exists outside of that prescriptive, instrumental, technical, um, highly regulated, highly anxious, perhaps even, highly melancholic. Although I actually think melancholy is a good thing for education, but we're always worried about not meeting the goals that we set for ourselves, and so this kind of more poetic inroad into education is about like going, actually, all the reasons that we're stressing out about the future of technological disruption are caused by what we might call the technological society. So the French philosopher Jacques Ellul, wrote about the technological society not as a society full of computers, but as a society that thought computers were the answer to the future of its technological problems. That
Let me
that's
just
science fiction, I think.
yeah, I'll just
Please,
jump in there. And
before I go too far into that hole. Yeah.
oh, that's fine, man. We'll have to move into like the actual projects that we've been doing, but just a
Okay.
note before we do that. I think what you've done here is illustrate the type of so when you do a PhD, when you finish your PhD, and then you start doing other things, you become a supervisor of research and a principal investigator and all of that. And then with that, I mean, it's a really interesting and good experience. But with that comes at least an institutional expectation that you are no longer the learner. You are now the expert and the teacher. And one thing that I want to say here is that in our collaborations, I've always felt like a PhD student. Um, and I've been lucky to form teams or find people in the university that would normally not even talk to each other. So people who are have their offices, their appointments in different schools, in different faculties, and people who would normally not talk to each other. And I've been very lucky to co-supervise research, to go after some funding with people like Andrew, and just sitting there and listening to each other and learning from each other. So I feel that there is a mutual interest and a mutual respect for maybe a metaphor is what I think of as the oceans of ignorance. So the oceans of ignorance that connect our islands. And coming to this talk from Aotearoa, New Zealand, from the South Pacific, where that was something that I found really interesting here with the Polynesian culture that doesn't perceive the ocean as a barrier between islands, but it's a connecting it's a connections between different islands. And so identifying that because of our academic and personal trajectories, we end up being an island of knowledge, however small or not, or whatever the metaphor is. Often universities are very good at separating people, and schools and society very good at separating people and putting them into categories and labels. And I found that disrupting that has been very enjoyable, and it has led to very interesting projects and very interesting results. So we're going to talk about a couple of them, and then we're going to close with a big idea that we've come up with in these projects.
Yes. So there's two projects I'd love to talk about a little bit, and the first one is actually the one that's ongoing rather than kind of coming to its close, or at least coming to the end of a project. So one of the things that Ricardo has led in terms of this real like commitment to bring people together is a group of academics within AUT and outside of AUT who are particularly interested in children's experiences of out of school programs. And the most wonderful thing about this, I think, is that it recognizes the limits of schooling for like the opportunities for children to engage in design and for those design experiences to be fundamentally focused on personal and collective well-being. So that's one of the projects, and the essential part of that is bringing everyone together um, to produce an ongoing and sustainable relationship where we're constantly questioning and disrupting the the experience of the child in what we might call the agency of their learning. And that's all been made possible because it's not just a group of teachers talking in an echo chamber worried about the curriculum. It's it's bouncing ideas around in this kind of really like unpredictable way. So that's one project, and um, we'd love to talk more about it, but we actually don't have a lot of time at this stage. And so if people are interested in those, then obviously get in touch with us and we can talk more about the ongoing concerns around children's out of school program experiences and design and wellbeing. Uh, the other project is looking at the ways in which children engage with computational thinking in makerspaces. And so Ricardo had been working with secondary school students at Manurewa High School in Auckland, here in New Zealand, and um, really insightfully connecting the future of robotics with the future of citizenship. That's my really rough explanation of it. But so that, as an early childhood teacher and someone who's interested in early childhood curriculum, that immediately attracted me um, to be able to present, um, a far deeper, far more social, far more collective understanding of robotics for the future of our lives. So that got us into a conversation about how it is that we might research children's learners' engagements with this thing that was new at the time, a few years back now, but still fairly new, called the digital curriculum in New Zealand. So the Ministry of Education was concerned uh, to to govern and shape a digital curriculum across all the traditional learning areas in this country, mainly for primary and secondary schooling. And we were interested in researching how that might occur in the more loose spaces rather than the intentional and assessment focused spaces of school, the loose spaces of the maker spaces. So how is the digital curriculum, and in particular the the essence of computational thinking contained within the digital curriculum, how is that experienced as a really embodied and collective and emancipatory focus of a makerspace? And so we've been researching, the history of maker culture and maker spaces, and how they operate in schools, and then how they offer insights and also entry points to computational thinking for the future. That uh, Ricardo, your
No, no,
thoughts?
I'm very happy listening to you. I think the only thing that I want to bring to this kind of like introduction about the project is, for me personally, one of the, if not the main insight that came from this project is spending time at the makerspace and working with the students and the teachers. Um, I think it was the fact that, or the idea by default that when you bring a new set of skills like computer programming into education, mainstream education, there is this immediate idea from the policymakers, from many teachers, that step zero in the code, in the algorithm, step zero is to train the teachers um, in computer code so that then they can teach it to the students. So I'm just taking one piece of the computational thinking construct, which is much broader than just coding, but I think it's a good representation. And when you question that assumption, that logic, and you think, well, no, hold on, um, maybe you don't need to turn teachers into coders so that they can teach code to the children.
Mm.
Maybe things can be different. And I'm not going to go into too much detail there because it would take me like an hour to explain all the details. But the essence that both teachers and students are learning not only to code, which they can learn together, and some students will come to the classroom with their own experiences learning code. I've seen over the last 15 years students who bring Minecraft skills or Scratch or um, other toys, that digital toys that they've experienced, or creating worlds in Roblox, like things that they've done on their own interests, and they arrive in the classroom with a more advanced set of skills than most teachers. So identifying that the students can be way ahead of the teachers in terms of the typing the commands, and to be comfortable with that, and to be say, well, look, you don't need to be an expert coder to 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 talk to the children or to talk with the children about what programming means and what things should be automated in the future and what decisions coders make for others on behalf of others. So those conversations that would mean that coding is not only punching some keys to type the commands. And mind you, this was, as Andrew said, this was thinking that we started forming in 2017 and 18, right? Um, just recently, GPT-4 was demoed, and GPT-4 is very good at producing the code, right? So this is even more the case today, that it's the future of digital technologies are going to require much more advanced skills than typing code. And by advanced, so this is actually something that Andrew came up
Mm.
with in one of our early meetings, is advanced computational thinking. So how do we how do we go to the next level of computational thinking that is not necessarily the mechanical or the instrumental aspects of knowing what commands to type, but thinking more deeply about what code really does and what it does in society and what it does to our individual mental health and physical health and to our relationships with other people and the knowledge and the know-hows and how it feels to play or to learn or to be human or to talk to other people. So all those things that are way deeper are more in community, um, more ethical, more critical. Um, Teachers can perfectly um, use their teaching experience to engage in these learning points without having to go through any training of um, Scratch or Java or a programming language. Sorry, I extended way more than I intended to, but that would be my take on.
I think that's perfect, and it actually, perhaps in kind of summing up, leads to two scenarios that I'd like to suggest in terms of where we see this as being functional and practical and livable as a series of ideas and conversations, as narratives, but with like, really, really experiential implications. And so the first one, thinking about algorithms and asking AI to do something for you, is that the purpose of this work is to produce a future in which no student would ever be ever seriously contemplate getting someone to write their essay for them, right? That would be like, why would you rob me of the essence of my learning by suggesting that? So, advanced computational thinking is about the capacity to go, to laugh in an absurd manner when someone suggests, "Oh, well, you could just get you could just get ChatGPT to do it for you," and the student would go, "Are you serious?" So
Why?
that's
Yeah.
one. Yeah. Why would I do that? Why would I just undermine
Yeah.
myself as a learner
Yeah.
by doing that? And so no one will ever be anxious about these kinds of uh, this kind of software because it would always just seem absurd to even suggest it. And the second scenario is, is a future in universities or anywhere, but let's just say universities because that's where I work. A future where you don't find suddenly that your classroom space has been redesigned without any conversations with you. So, for those of you that work in various contexts, imagine that moment where you arrive after a break or, even after just a couple of days and you see that something has changed in the learning environment. There's a new piece of technology or a change in the structure of the building, and you wonder, how was that designed?
Mhm.
Like, and who had a conversation about this? So this advanced computational thinking is an idea in which you would never actually have to wonder that because you know that all the conversations that designers had about classroom spaces was a conversation that involved you necessarily, so that when your understanding of the connection between design and teaching, design and education, and technology and education is always something that you live daily because you're having a conversation with the very people whose responsibility it is to decide what kind of space you're going to be teaching in to the future designers, to the future teachers. So those are, I think, are the two scenarios that I'd like to finish on, if that's okay.